Today, I'm going over GLP-1s, specifically for health plans. Now, why is this important? Well, for many of my clients, monitoring the cost of medications and health plans in general is important. And also for those of you watching, you may be an HR manager. You may have employees who are struggling to get access to the medications that they want within your health plan. And maybe this will bring home some insights as how to solve some of those problems. And this is emerging data that I'm going to go over. I mean, GLP-1s haven't been around that long. It feels like they've been around forever when I think of it, but a lot of this information came out or started coming out in 2023. These are newer medications. We're just starting to learn about them. We're just starting to learn how popular they are. We're looking at the trend increases in these medications over time and the cost increases, and also what health plans and insurance companies are doing to manage costs. Obviously, costs have gone up year over year. We have had some very unique years since 2020. In 2020, we saw health plans increase by about 3 to 5%. Most of my clients got 3%, 5% renewals between 2020 and 2023. And those came to a screeching halt starting in 2024. And this year, we're seeing double-digit increases again. And what I'm hearing in the market from underwriters and actuaries is that a lot of these increases are delayed. The reasons that are given are mixed as to why in 2020, 2021, and 2022, during a pandemic, you would think that health costs would go through the roof. Well, you have to remember that the only services that were available in those years were COVID-related services. I mean, everyone shut everything down. I remember my husband got a cut on his hand, and it was a very deep cut. It was several inches long and very deep, and even got into his tendon slightly. We went to the emergency room and urgent care, and there was no one there that could suture him up. Everyone got sent home except for nurses and specialists surrounding COVID. And it took hours to get someone, everybody got sent home. They were on call, all these cardiologists and brain surgeons and all sorts of specialists got sent home and were on call for a long time. And only essential services were given during those years. And many people, including myself, delayed treatments. I didn't go to a doctor. I wanted to stay away. I didn't want to go to the dentist in a spacesuit. I didn't want to go to the doctor. I stayed away for several years. And some argue that the repercussions for that is no one got their wellness exams, no one got cancer screenings. So if you can catch cancer early, the costs of the treatment, in most cases, statistically, what we see in health plans is the sooner they're caught, the less expensive it is. Everybody wants to catch it early for the patient. Now, when I say healthcare plans, it usually refers to employers that are self-funded. And much of this data that we're going to go over today is from health plans that are self-funded. So there are employers out there, usually over about 500 employees. It starts making sense for the employer to self-fund. And what that means is they rent a contract from an insurance company or rent a network from an insurance company. So an Aetna, the Blues, Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of the big carriers, UHC, and that will give that employer access and all of their employees access to the network. So employees can go in or out of network in a PPO, right? Now, the insurance company isn't necessarily paying out the claims on those plans. They're just renting out their network, and the employer is responsible for paying all of their claims other than big stop-loss insurance that's put in place. So there's usually this big overreaching policy, this policy that will cover the gaps if someone's claims go above a certain amount, $50,000, $100,000, or it can be an aggregate of, let's say, $1 million, something like that. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of self-funding, but I want the HR person who's listening to this, or the CEO or the CFO or the employee that wants to learn more about how these health plans actually work, the nuts and bolts and mechanics. I just want to give you a general context of what I mean when I'm talking about healthcare plans. That's all. It usually refers to employers, the big boys, the bigger employers out there that can self-fund their plan, and they are paying their claims out of their pocket. Now, one of the advantages for us to look at these larger plans is we get more information. So in small group, which is the majority of my clients, are smaller employers, and most of my clients are between 50 employees and about 250 employees. So in that segment, we have very limited information on claims. It's a black box, if you will, unless we go level funded or have some sort of an HRA. We really don't know what's going on with the members. We don't know how many GLP-1s they're using. We don't know the obesity numbers. All of that information is tied up and protected by legislation. It's called HIPAA, and it's private health information. So the insurance companies hide behind HIPAA when they're sharing claims information with us. Sometimes we get very general information. It might say there's this many claims over $50,000, and get very general information about diagnoses. But again, it's very, very minimal information that we have, which makes it hard to make decisions about a population. When we don't know what the employees are using and we don't know what the employees need, it can make it very difficult for an employer to make an informed decision because there's very minimal information. How do you make an informed decision on your population when you have very little information? That can be very frustrating. So where we turn to in these sorts of situations is benchmarking data or these surveys that come out that tell us what the general population is using in certain areas. Sometimes we can narrow it down to an industry or an employer size or a region. That helps us get as close as possible to what that demographic of that employer population might need or want. The other thing that employers sometimes do is they will survey their own population. So sending out employee surveys directly to the employees. We do that from time to time for our clients. We find that if it comes from a third party, employees may be more comfortable with sending information to a third party, of course, stating that it's 100% confidential and we will not be sharing your specific data with your employer. Some employees feel very uneasy sharing their health information with their employer, or perhaps their spouse has a history of cancer or they have a history of a chronic disease. They don't want to feel like they could be singled out for being laid off or fired because they're costing the health plan too much money. And it's unfortunate that that is a thought and that is something that an employer would do. All of my clients, everyone that I work with, their heart is in the right place. And I'm very careful with who I work with for this reason. All of my clients truly care about their employees. They're being maternal, paternal, providing these benefits because they want to do the best thing for their people, the best thing for their employees. And that's really the primary driver for the people that I work with and for. And those tend to be the people that I'm reaching out to here. I'm assuming that you're one of those people, you want to take care of your people. You're not just looking to cut costs wherever you can. Of course, we have to keep the business up and running, so we can't let the costs run exponentially or run out of control. The idea of having this information is to balance that. You want to balance, okay, let's get access for these medications to the people that really need it. And the people who don't get it, what do we do with them? These people that aren't getting the GLP-1s that they want, these semaglutides, these Wegovys and Ozempic treatments and medications, they're seeking it out for a reason. There's a spark there that we don't want to dim. And also another thing that I want to bring up is, as I talk, I've never taken them personally. I don't have hands-on experience with GLP-1s. I also want to state that I'm not judgmental towards people that are taking any medications. It is your body. It is up to you and your doctor what is safe for you to take and what your goals are and what outcomes you're driving towards and what tools you're going to use to get there. GLP-1s is one of those tools, in my opinion. I think it's a tool for people to use. If it works for you, great, great. If it sets someone out on a health and wellness journey and makes you a healthier person, I'm 100% behind that. So throughout this presentation, I hopefully don't come across as I'm judging anyone for taking them. I'm just reading off information from a survey that has data on costs regarding these medications and what health plans and employers and insurance companies are doing to try to mitigate these costs. All right. And sorry, it's been a long intro. And let me introduce myself. My name is Melissa. I have worked with thousands of employers over the last 20 years and helped them manage their employee benefits. I help employers educate their employees. I help get data to and fro between the employer and the insurance plans and the insurance companies. I work with and for my clients. I do not work for the insurance company. So I'm the advocate between the insurance company and my clients, or the insurance company and their employees. And of course, I have a team of people that help me accomplish all of this. Disclaimer, what I am not. I am not your broker. I am not looking at your health plan right now. I do not know what you have, so don't take this as any verification of coverage, or please refer to your health plan and your specific EOC and your specific policy. This is general information for general educational and entertainment purposes only. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. And I think that's it. I do have a disclaimer up here somewhere in the video, so please read that and proceed with that information in mind. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes. GLP-1s have not been out for very long, so this, and also the information is highly weighted with the insurance carriers because there isn't a lot of information, right? The less information we have on costs for something, the more weighted that information is going to be, and the more the trends in that data are going to matter to these actuaries and these underwriters and these insurance companies that are trying to anticipate what costs are going to be in 2026. So you have to remember that everyone is looking forward to 2026 now and coming up with those rates right now. So originally, GLP-1s came out to manage diabetes. Ever since I was a young Jedi in the insurance broker industry, it has been talked about how to manage diabetes. Diabetes is an expensive disease for health plans, and across the board, it has been a hot topic to try to manage those who have diabetes and do so in the most cost-effective and efficient way, not only for employee engagement, retention, employee productivity, reducing absenteeism, all of those HRE terms to mean, in short, managing costs and managing how the employee is doing within their company culture, right? So if the employee feels that they're not able to manage their diabetes while at work and working for a company whose health plan doesn't help them with their chronic illness, they're going to leave. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to find another employer that does, and that may be a key employee for you. It's a very common condition. More and more people every year are diagnosed with diabetes or pre-diabetes, and many people who are pre-diabetic don't even know that they're pre-diabetic. So that's one of the issues that have come up over the years. That's one of the reasons why before COVID, a lot of employers were doing health fairs, and during those health fairs were doing biometric screenings, which included looking at blood pressure, looking at someone's blood sugar, and looking at some key metrics. But the majority of the reason and the majority driver behind doing that was to try to catch people that were pre-diabetic and help make them aware, right? Because when we have a problem, the first step is awareness. If you're not aware of a problem, you can't solve it. So if we could go in this health fair, provide free services, get blood sugar screenings and the like, very inexpensive for the employer to do in a group setting, and catch those pre-diabetic employees before it turns into diabetes, that was seen as the best case scenario. That was something that was really a trend right before 2020 and was gaining steam. And of course, in person, things like this got knocked out. And there are some mail order kits that are being used now where it's going directly to the employee's home and they can do finger prick testing and send it back to a lab. We're seeing employers go that direction now as well. But my point is, managing diabetes has always been something that employers and health plans and insurance companies have been focused on and see a lot of value in anything that can help people in that area. Now, GLP-1s come out, and the marketing behind GLP-1s in the beginning was to manage diabetes and manage type 2 diabetes. And quickly, it was realized that it helps with weight loss. Now, from my perspective, because I am a health and fitness nerd, I don't want to say I don't care about weight loss, but I don't really care about weight loss. I care about losing fat and building muscle. So when I see weight loss, I go, okay, great, you're losing weight, but what does that mean? Are you losing your bone density? Are you losing muscle mass? Are you hurting your organs? There's all these other things that can come with weight loss that are not good. So that was my one big skepticism when this first came into the market. And there have been some studies that have shown that, yes, it does eat into your muscle. It really comes down to, I believe, I would imagine, again, I haven't really looked at the studies too much, but just from my knowledge and experience in diet nutrition and being a nerd in that area, I would imagine that as long as the member is eating, or the patient is eating enough protein, they're probably going to hold on to their muscle better because they're going into such a severe calorie deficit. And when the body goes into severe calorie deficit, it tends to eat muscle unless you're eating enough protein. But if your digestive system is blocked from absorbing things, and again, I don't know exactly how all the GLP-1s work, mechanisms behind it, but if there's some sort of an absorption issue the person is having and not able to get all the amino acids and proteins into their bloodstream to tell the body, hey, everything's all right, we're not starving to death, don't eat my muscle, because muscle is very expensive for the body. The body wants to do the path of least resistance, and it doesn't have a prefrontal cortex. Us humans do, but our bodies don't. So the body just knows the inputs that it's feeling and receiving, and you are going from eating, let's say, a normal 2,000 to 3,000 calorie diet. Probably most Americans are eating somewhere around there. Go from eating that many calories to eating very little. The body thinks that you're starving. Your body thinks you're in a famine. It goes, oh my gosh, we have to get rid of all this muscle and store fat because things are rough out there. This person is not doing a good job hunting. This person is not doing a good job gathering. Let's get this baby more efficient for holding on to our fat. So it can do the opposite. And again, I don't know the studies specifically on GLP-1s, And I'm not even really sure 100% how I got off on that tangent. But what we saw in the data is that in 2023, the total spend, the cost of GLP-1s was about 6.7% of the total cost of all healthcare claims for the groups that were surveyed. And then that went up, that trend changed 200%. So 200% net change in the direction of the trend. So it was exponentially going up, which has freaked out all of the insurance companies. So the reason why I got off on that tangent, doesn't really have anything to do with this part. But originally it was just for diabetes. So health plan said, okay, as long as you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, and you have a prescription from your doctor, go for it. Let's go ahead and get them on these GLP-1s. And they're $1,000 to $1,500 a month, which isn't the least expensive medication out there, but it's certainly not the most expensive. But the popularity is what has now been driving this, because the general population hears weight loss and they go crazy. Okay, all I have to do is take this medicine and I lose weight. Period, end of story. That's sold, 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 and sold. Now, probably the only thing that the GLP-1s have against them is that they are injectables. I know that in other studies that I've looked at, members and patients tend to prefer taking a pill over an injectable. So I'm sure that they would love to do some sort of a pill for these sorts of medications, but I just think that it's just not an option. The drug won't work through the digestive system, and it has to be injected. So could you imagine if this was available in pill form, how many more people would probably be taking it? But nevertheless, I digress. So in 2024, GLP-1 drugs were 46.8%. 46.8% of drug spend increase. So the amount that all the drugs, all the prescriptions in a health plan, the total cost, the total increase of the total cost of all prescriptions, 46.8% of that cost increase was due to GLP-1s in 2024. So the cost has just really been, again, freaking out all the insurance companies. So what we've seen over the last year or so is these drugs have become much more difficult to get your hands on. There are more pre-authorizations, and we'll go over what those are for most health plans. If you were getting this medication before, maybe in 2023, and then in 2024 you were told, oh, you have to have this higher benchmark or this higher pre-qualification. In 2025, it's even harder to get your hands on these medications and have them covered by insurance. So in 2023, 6.9% of the total annual cost of all claims was due to GLP-1s. So out of every claim out there, the preemies, the labors, the surgeries, knee surgeries, hip surgeries, cancer treatments, Humira, all the autoimmune drugs, out of all of the cost of all of those claims, 6.9% of all the costs went to GLP-1s. Okay, and that was in its first year, 2023. Now in 2024, 8.9% of claims, of all claims, total claims, not just prescriptions, all medical claims, 8.9% of all medical claims were GLP-1 drugs. Okay, 2025, they're expecting, of course, they're estimating for the rest of the year because we're still in 2025, but 10.5% of all the costs of all the claims are going towards GLP-1s. And many employers that are self-funded are just planning on it being 15% next year. So this is the exponential increase we're seeing in cost due to the popularity of these GLP-1s. It's become a problem for these health plans and managing the cost. So what employers are doing about it and what health insurance companies and these health plans are doing about it is 96% of them are now requiring a pre-authorization. In the beginning, it was just you need a doctor's prescription. Now they want pre-authorization, and the pre-authorization includes physician-led management. all right? As well as, in many cases, not only does somebody have to have diabetes, they also have to have at least one chronic condition, and then sometimes even two chronic conditions, as well as a BMI of over 30. Now, some of the more generous health plans are only requiring a BMI over 27, as well as prediabetes and diabetes, but we're seeing that number go up. We're seeing the BMI requirements becoming higher and higher. Now, what is BMI? Some of you might not know. So BMI is an index. You're given an index, a number, based off of your height and your weight. And it goes from about 18.5 all the way up to 40. And 40 is the highest level of morbid obesity. Obesity starts at 30? Yes. So the first level of obesity starts at 30, and then overweight starts at 25. And so again, we're seeing around 27 being the very generous health plans are only requiring people to be a 27 BMI, and we're seeing it more in the 30 mark, and some of them even up to 35. Some of them requiring morbid obesity, which is 35 BMI or higher, to even be pre-authorized to have these medications covered by your insurance. All right, I have some numbers here where it's breaking down. 88% of health plans are requiring a minimum BMI. All right, like what I talked about before, 27 or 30 or even 35 BMI. All right, so 88% of health plans are requiring some sort of BMI limit, a minimum number, before they'll even consider authorizing this to be covered by insurance. Now, 60% are requiring obesity and at least one chronic disease. So being over 30 BMI and having one chronic disease, which probably most commonly is diabetes. And others, about 34% of health plans are requiring two chronic diseases, so BMI and two chronic diseases before they will consider authorizing this. And this is the last statistic. The other piece of data that was in here that really was interesting to me, and I'm not really sure exactly what it means. Of course, the study went through and tried to extrapolate what this really meant, and we don't know what it means. We know that the obesity numbers haven't slowed down. We know that the diabetes and prediabetes numbers haven't slowed down. So these GLP-1s haven't impacted those numbers yet. Not to say they never will, but they certainly haven't yet. Again, that doesn't mean that they're not worth doing, right? If it impacts you and your loved one in a positive way, that's worth it, right? If these GLP-1s help take somebody from being morbidly obese to being healthy in your company, that's worth it. So I don't want that to sound dismissive of this, but I wanted to bring up that we have this bucket of traditional prescriptions, right? So we look at traditional prescriptions, which on your health plan will be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, right? Tier 1 is usually generic, tier 2 is brand, and tier 3 is typically non-formulary. And most of these are taken in pill form. You know, high blood pressure medications and cholesterol medications and all sorts of medications, right? Those are all traditional prescriptions. And then you have specialty drugs. And we are used to, I am used to, at least over the last 20 years, seeing specialty medications just go through the roof. You know, the cost of Humira, the cost of all these biologics for autoimmune conditions. We've seen autoimmune conditions go through the roof, and the cost of those medications can be quite high. So it wasn't uncommon to see a 10% increase in this specialty. When we're looking at the pie of all prescription drug costs, we would see like 50% of everything being specialty drugs. That was becoming common. And we're seeing more and more of that pie being eaten up by specialty medications, because those are going up about 10% every year. And so just to give you some context, these GLP-1s are under traditional medications in with the high blood pressure and the cholesterol medications, right? That's where they put GLP-1s. I don't really know why, but that's where they live in the data. And in 2021, before any of these costs came in before GLP-1s were even being covered by health plans and before they even existed in 2021, we were seeing traditional drugs costs every year go up with inflation. And in 2021, it was 2.1%. Now in 2024, traditional medications went up 12.8%. Now, this survey is attributing it towards GLP-1 costs. All right. Now, that might be just general inflation, other inflationary drivers in that, because we have had some breathtaking inflation, consumer price inflation data come in over the last couple of years. But in 2024, we did see 12.8% in traditional med costs go up. All right. And then in specialty medications in 2020, those medications went up 9.2%, which was like, okay, yawn. We've seen this before. Those things have been going up 10%, sometimes even more. We saw crazy years for those medications in the past 20 years. And so 9.2% in 2020 for specialty medications wasn't a jaw dropper. But those have now gone down to 4.9% in 2024. So the cost of specialty medications is stabilizing. And now we're seeing these traditional medication, that bucket go up pretty high, and many professionals and actuaries and people that are data experts are saying it's because of these GLP-1s. We'll have to just wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen next year with those. With that, thank you for hanging out to the end. Hopefully you found this information as exciting as I did. If you are an employer, an HR manager, a CEO, CFO, and you want to see how your health plans stack up against today's standards, I do have a link down below for a free assessment where you can sign up for a free assessment with me. Please like, comment, hit the bell. Would love to hear from you, and we will see you next time.